Landlord. He was anxious only that we should never mention we were using the garret as an office. The local council had designated it as a residence. A residence with no kitchen, no bathroom, and no ceiling. In one room, you could look straight through the rafters into the gaps between the roof tiles and see the sky. Next, a close friend and colleague, Richard Adams, designed some smart-headed notepaper for us free of charge, suspecting, rightly, that we might be able to provide him with work if our venture succeeded. A small printer I had come to know while working for OZ magazine agreed to print this notepaper, knowing full well I could not pay him for it right then. A semi-friendly, amused bank manager at Barclays Bank in Tottenham Court Road opened an account for the company, into which I deposited the mighty sum of £50. A magazine distributor, Moore Harness, with whom OZ had done business, agreed to distribute my product, although I had nothing to show them. All we needed now was content for our comic and a printer to print it. The content was not a problem. We knew plenty of comic illustrators, and they would not expect to be paid in advance. Indeed, some of them would not expect to be paid at all, and were surprised when we eventually managed to do so. The printing was the big stumbling block, of course. Somehow, I had to persuade a printer to provide machine time and paper to produce the comic we were busy preparing in the garret. The bill would come to a few £1,000s. I had written a great many record reviews when I worked for OZ magazine. The record companies would send albums directly to my flat in the hope of soliciting a review, and they never asked for the LPs back. I sorted out all the albums I could bear to part with and sold them to a local record shop. This brought in just sufficient funds to at least get a few printers to talk to me while Dick and I lived on £10 a week. But unless I could guarantee that the printers got paid, not one of them, very sensibly, would budge. Then I had an idea. I asked Brian Moore and Charlie Harness, the owners of my potential distributors for the comic, to write to a particular printer, promising that he would be the first to receive money from Moore Harness when the comic came out. Brian and Charlie did not guarantee the money. They were not exactly idiots. But they made it sound, as a matter of common sense, that at least enough money was likely to be generated by sales of the comic to pay the print and paper bill. And they stressed that their client, my little company, would only receive any residue when and if the printer had been paid in full. This was the key. Brian and Charlie turned out to be the most effective fishes in the pond of my ambition. Business must have been slow, because the printer agreed to Moore Harness's proposal. I secretly suspect that he did so as much to keep me from constantly badgering him as anything else. Persistence is a powerful tool in the hands of a hungry young hustler on the make, and he probably did not wish to offend a powerful distributor like Moore Harness. Distributors sometimes have a say in who gets to print what. Thus it was that the first issue of Cosmic Comics was unleashed upon an unsuspecting world. It barely made a cent, but it provided the framework for yet more publishing ventures. Within 2 years I had £60,000 in the bank. That is the equivalent of £500,000 today. The printers were paid. The contributors were paid. The designers were paid. The landlord was paid. Bernie Simons got paid. Even Dick and I were paid. Above all, I retained control of the company. A company I still own 100% of 30 years later. I had created capital by swimming with the fishes. Without Dick's expertise, or the kindness of a lawyer, or the trust of contributors and designers, or the amused tolerance of my distributors, or any of 100 other encouragements from those around me, it simply could not have been done. I have read, in articles written about me since in newspapers and magazines, that fierce loyalty to old friends and colleagues is my best characteristic. I believe that to be so. But having read all of the above, can anyone wonder why? Some will argue that what I did back in 1972 could not be emulated today. But human nature does not change and, at bottom, we are cooperative animals. Many people are indulgent towards the young. After all, we were all once young ourselves. Those who wish to start a company and get rich cannot expect a free ride. But they might be surprised at the number of fishes in their particular pond willing to help them to some degree or another. And look at the consequences in my own case. Omar Harness continued to distribute my magazines. When Brian and Charlie were forced to sell their company years later, I fought hard to ensure fair treatment for its two founders. By that time, I was in a posy tie-in to return their original favor. Dick Fountain is still a director of Dennis Publishing, and the company has put food on his table for more than 30 years. Our landlord was happy to sell me the building in which our garret was located decades later when he retired. The printer went on printing for us until the day he sold up. As far as Dick and I were concerned, we owed him. I continued to bank with Barclays for far longer than I should have done, solely from a sense of misplaced loyalty. Richard Adams still designs projects for me. And guess what? My legal advisors in the UK today are a firm named Simons, Muirhead and